Me? Thank you very, very much for coming to our seminar this morning on pony and muscle cars. It's the morning. Has everybody had their coffee? Everybody's up and around and feeling lively? Because what you have here in front of you is a very lively group. These guys have all been a part of these seminars before, and it's always entertaining. And I think above all, you guys should have some good information today and some great entertainment. So I get the pleasure of introducing the panel to you today and our moderator. And I'll start with our moderator, Jonathan Stein, who is the editor-in-chief of our Hagerty magazine. He's also the former editor and publisher of Automobile Quarterly. He's a noted author, lots of other things in his long history with cars and our hobby. On the panel, we have, I'll start over here, here with Ken Lingenfelter. Raise your hand, Ken, please. Ken's one of the biggest names in high performance today. His company, Lingenfelter Performance Engineering, it's one of the most respected manufacturers of high performance parts and modifications for tuning GM cars. He also oversees the fabulous Lingenfelter car collection, obviously his namesake. Next to him, Alain Squindo with RM Auctions. He's the Chief Operating Officer of RM Sotheby's and is an authority on all kinds of cars, whether they're European or American. Rob Sass, directly to the right of Jonathan Stein. Many of you guys know Rob already. He was with Sports Car Market, publisher of the Hagerty magazine, and a frequent automotive contributor to the New York Times. Currently the editor-in-chief of Chevrolet's New Roads magazine. Finally, over here on the far end of the panel, Dave Kinney, ASA appraiser, all-around valuation authority, as well as the publisher of the Hagerty Price Guide. So these guys are going to be really talking about some interesting things today. I think this topic, pony and muscle cars, is something that resonates with a lot of people in the hobby. You know, personally, I was 16 years old. It was 1987. My first car ever was a 1965 Mustang Fastback. You know, a little A-code, air-conditioned car. It didn't last long, unfortunately. It's not in the gene pool of surviving vehicles. Probably should have started with a 6-cylinder. Maybe that would have been better. My dad will probably agree with that. So we're going to talk about some interesting things in the market. We also wanted to note that the Chevrolet exhibition outside is going to have some really, really interesting cars. On display are the 2017 50th anniversary Camaro, brand new ZL1, brand new Camaro 1LE, a 92 Camaro 25th anniversary edition, a 74 Camaro Z28, and a 67 Camaro convertible pace car. It's actually interesting. I had lunch yesterday with one of the design engineers on that new ZL1, and it's fascinating what, you know, seat of the pants sort of things still come into when these guys are designing. It's not just all laptops. So I will turn this over now to Jonathan Stein. And if you guys please check your phones, make sure that they're not going to make beautiful music in the middle of this so we can all focus and have a wonderful time. But thank you very much for being here, and away we go.
Thank you, Brad. Well, again, thank you for joining us. And I'd like to dive right in since we've had the introduction from Brad, and I'd like to start with Dave. It's funny to start with pony cars and muscle cars and ask a global question. My global question is, with the UK leaving the common market with the Brexit vote, how is that going to affect the market, and is it going to have any effect on pony cars and muscle cars, Dave?
At this point, probably nothing at all. I don't think that we're going to see any big pullback. Obviously, the American market is the strongest market for muscle cars. Those of you who don't know, the Swedish market is probably the second biggest. They buy an awful lot of American four-door muscle and quite a bit of two-door muscle as well. So it's limited mostly to the United States. And kind of a global, statement on this thing. Everybody thinks that things are horrible in the car market because of what they put together with things from the art market and things from everything else. Actually, the car market's pretty strong. We'll know more after Monterey, but there are some cars that went up very fast that are not going up anymore. But the really great automobiles, and it doesn't matter whether they're Hemi Cudas or their Ferrari race cars, the really great cars are still very, very much sought after and still, almost to a car are appreciating in value.
You agree completely?
I do. I don't think it's going to be like the last pullback that happened in 2008 and 2009. That one really hit the muscle car market kind of squarely between the eyes. The meltdown in real estate and subprime mortgages, there were a lot of people who were using home equity money to buy cars. There were people who were in the home building real estate business, people who went from being drywall contractors to full-fledged home builders during the housing boom, whose businesses really suffered in that, and they were heavily invested in the muscle car market. That's not this, and it took a long time for that market to recover for those reasons, because muscle cars, as Dave mentioned, for the most part, don't trade in an international market. This time around, if there's a pullback, it's at best going to deal the muscle car market a glancing blow, I think, 'cause it's not a homegrown problem. It's not hitting squarely, in an industry where a lot of money is flowing into muscle cars. So I think it's going to be a stable year for muscle cars. I think we're going to do just fine.
I think I agree with both of you. Any commentary earlier this year about disastrous fire and brimstone commentary, quite frankly, I think was completely unfounded. And if we talk about the auction market in particular, this sale and our upcoming Monterey sale are perfect examples. Just by catalog offering alone of what's coming to market shortly, our catalog value is higher this year than it ever was. In Monterey, it's just as it was last year with less cars. So the average value of what we're offering is wonderful. And for pony cars in particular, we've got tremendous Mustangs, even Cobras, Shelbys, et cetera, et cetera. I completely agree with both of you. I think the fire and brimstone commentary is way too extreme for what's been happening.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, and Dave and I have talked about this, I think a fair amount, and Ken and I were talking about it earlier, is just sort of the vibrancy of the market right now in terms of sort of new things that are being added as younger people come into the market.
Yeah.
You're seeing interest in fourth generation F-body cars, from the 90s and the early 2000s. And things like that. I think that's really interesting. It's a really good and positive thing because, let's face it, we're in kind of a new automotive golden age right now. There is great stuff being built now and great stuff that was built in the last 10 or 15 years, and those are going to continue to hold people's interest. I mean, maybe not to the extent that people of our generation are interested in 60s and 70s cars right away, but it's bound to happen.
As a buyer and a collector too, I'm not seeing any bargains, and I'm always looking for bargains. Obviously, my day starts with looking at eBay and then barn finds, and then I might wander my way over to Bring a Trailer. Which, by the way, just in case you guys don't know about Bring a Trailer, write that down because it is the coolest site. Randy is a guy, he's an enthusiast. He's up in the Bay Area, and he's turned Bring a Trailer into something really, really, really cool. I mean, you get a feed every morning. There are cars that he finds or people have suggested that are on eBay that are bargains or on Craigslist. Now he's developed his own small auction site, which I have to admit I've obliged 3 times now successfully. So, but it's just a very, very cool site, and it's every day. Great way to start the day.
Now I know how I'm going to sell that car to Ken. So that's
Ken, have you noticed, is there a particular muscle or pony car that people are really lighting up now? Is there a trend in the market?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as things go, the different age groups enjoy different kinds of cars, and I think there's some energy now in the the 80s and 90s cars as things move up, and you see IROC Camaros, good Camaros and things like that doing better, and everybody knows Fox body Mustangs are a big deal, and the hard part about Fox body Mustangs is to try and find one unmodified, because everybody went in and changed this or changed that, and I've been looking for a good notchback because they're just really cool with a 5.0 and a manual, but
there was an XCHP, California Highway Patrol notchback Fox Mustang that popped up, I think, on Bring a Trailer not long ago. I was thinking about you in that. I don't know why I didn't.
Well, you should call me about those.
I know. I'm sorry, Ken. I mean, I found that and I thought, well, I think Ken Lingenfelter would probably like an ex-California.
I'm going to double down on something that Rob said. I think, and once again, and also referencing Ken, if you can find any F-body SLP cars, Camaro and Firehawk, doesn't matter, Firehawk, buy it. If it's a good car, that's the catch, because
97 anniversary
so
Camaros.
Yeah, so many of them were just used and used up. And
Yeah.
so now you're talking about restoring a car that's like less than one of your sons, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so less in age. I mean, it's incredible. So they're not that old, but a lot of them do need restoration work. There's a car you can absolutely double down on and buy all you want.
And there's still, any of the fourth generation F-body cars are great, great
You see
value
them for a
right now.
future? Is there real future in them?
Yes, absolutely. And the Terminator Mustang that no one's talking about yet,
Right.
the car that followed the R,
Yeah.
made for 2 years, supercharged.
Yeah.
It's got the name too. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a Terminator,
you're right,
so-
you're right. And the Fox Body Cobra R from '93, I mean, that ship has kind of sailed already.
Well,
but-
it's in the middle of the
Yeah.
cruise right now, but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
but,
no question.
the Terminator, what's wrong with it? Not really too much. I mean, it's the follow-on to the
Yeah,
R.
couldn't agree more. But same thing, we were talking about this earlier. Dave, it's probably 10 years ago, you did the Bandit run in a 76 or 77 Trans Am.
78, yeah.
I think you paid $8,000 for that car at the time, and it was a nice car.
Sold it for 18 and probably still lost $2,000, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, those cars, as we all know, are in the 30s now. I mean, frankly, I would buy every nice third generation black and gold Trans Am because the kids who grew up watching Knight Rider are going to want those cars.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to find a
They're
nice
off
one.
the radar screen too, pretty
Totally
much.
off the radar screen for
So,
now, but
yeah, exactly.
not for long.
And they're kind of fun to drive.
They are.
I mean, let's not leave that out. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of guys buy cars for different reasons, but these are really, truly fun cars to drive. They make some great noise. That's
They
a
do.
big deal for me.
Yep.
I hate to admit it, but I'm a noise guy.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to sell me something and it's making a good thumpy sound, I'm
I'm totally putting my car and bring a trailer now. So,
Sure, what I'm curious about is how much of this is really common knowledge, because I think auction houses like ours, a lot of the publications, what we're really pushing are the really high-end results, the incredibly rarefied air, what's selling for 6, even 7 figures, but that's such a small percentage of what's going on.
unbelievably small.
That I think
And-
there's very little data or even academic knowledge you can derive from something happening in that atmosphere when there's 5 bidders on it,
Yeah,
or 2.
I was doing a seminar not too long ago, and I said, I asked people in the room, how many have owned $1 million car? And then I said, okay, how many have owned $1 million car when it was worth $1 million? And there's a whole bunch of us who owned a car that that has gone close to that or somewhere. But very, very few people can afford a car that expensive. But my thing is, you can have so much fun at the $30,000 and $40,000 mark. It's incredible what you can buy, and because we're living in that automotive renaissance that's going on right now and has been going on for quite a few years. Things are getting better all the time, but the stuff that's 10 years old is just great.
Yeah, it is. And we've had this, you're particularly good at this, Dave, and coined something you call the principal of substitution. And what that basically is predicting what people are going to look for when car A sort of appreciates out of reach. Dave is really good at identifying, okay, what are you going to go for when. A good example of that is when early 70s Chevelles started to get really, really pricey, we started talking about 1970 Monte Carlos, like SS454 Montes, which are, maybe 200 pounds heavier than a Chevelle, but, big block power available and really nice cars for, a fraction the cost of a Chevelle. So
And
that's,
they go with a mullet much better.
but that's one of the things that Dave is really great at is is looking for, the next really cool
Buy
thing.
the Terminator.
You heard it here first.
It all depends on what you're interested in too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was making a case at another meeting I was at earlier is I don't buy cars specifically to hope they're going to increase in value. I have a hard time driving myself to overpay for anything. I'm watching the market from that standpoint. But the idea of trying to gamble that and buy a car today for this and sell it for this later on, I wouldn't play that game. I'd buy cars that you really like, that you're going to enjoy, things you have passion for. But I've won and lost at that game, probably lost more than one, when I thought something might go up or not, unintentionally.
You
but-
have to use passion first. I mean, look, if you
Yes.
don't like the car, my big thing is as a big guy, if I don't fit in the car, if I'm uncomfortable driving it, the car that I had, the Trans Am, was an automatic. And I thought, I'm going to really want the 4-speed. I really want the 4-speed. And then I drove the 4-speed, and I really didn't like the 4-speed in that generation of Firebird. It was, as we say, agricultural. It did make some good noises, but I was really happy on the Bandit run having the automatic because there were a lot of things going on. So you have to love the car that you buy. I mean, if you don't love it, it'll never get any better than the day you bought it. So that's big advice.
Yep.
Well, I got a question for Ken. In the muscle car world, does rare always top everything else? Is rare the leading focus?
I'd say, Jonathan, that somebody gave me a quote not too long ago. It said, rare is great, but, is it desirable? And, you don't want a rare car that's undesirable. We used the word passion a little while ago. That's always the thing that leads me. And, if it's a rare car and I have passion for it, then yeah, I'm probably on it. And I'm going to find a way to get it no matter what. The fun for me over all these years has been in the hunt. And I'm always looking for rare cars because in the Lingenfelter collection, I mean, the mission for our collection is charity work. We do charity fundraisers there. And I want to bring things in the collection that people haven't seen or that people are interested in or want to come and take a look at, and for maybe the first time. And so that's where the rare part comes in for me.
Well, hold on, because I was talking to Ken yesterday, and he has something parked in among all the Ferraris that draws the most attention. Ken, tell him about it.
Well, this was a little bit of an experiment, but it was a lot of fun. And there are a number of people think I need psychiatric help, by the way. So when I tell you this story, I want you to try and put it into perspective here, because there's a lot of passion that drives me. But of recent date, I bought a Gremlin X Levi version with a V8. And I mean, it's got a 4-speed, it's got the Levi interior, it makes a lot of great noises and such. But in the front room of our collection, for those of you who've seen it, we've got Ferraris and we've got Lingenfelter performance cars. So I happened to park this Gremlin X in that room just to see what would happen. And it's amazing how many people walked right by the Ferraris and right by the performance cars to see that Gremlin X. And a lot of people were just, really going head over heels over it. There were a few guys that came over and got me and put their arm around me and were questioning whether I needed some kind of intervention or asked me if I was maybe tipping a few too many brewskis when I bought it. But it's a fun car, so much fun that the next time somebody comes into the collection, they're also going to see a pacer next to it. So keep in mind, again, it's passion that drives me. Don't necessarily include a lot of intelligence that goes along with that.
But that doubles down on what we were saying about, if your passion only affords you $10,000, celebrate that. And
Right.
that's why I love Cars and Coffee so much, because you're going to see a $9,000 or $15,000 car mixed in with a $350,000 Lamborghini, and that's the way I like it.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do like Ken's point about drawing a distinction between rarity and desirability, because I find that with rarity, at least in our industry, there are two kinds of rarity that are sometimes misconstrued as desirability. And one might be that, well, there's so few of these cars built, but also in period, was that car even desirable? People even want to buy it. Is that why few
Rare
of them
and
built?
should be phenomenon.
Should be,
Yeah.
exactly. And on the other hand, I also find that that the rarity component is distilled too many times to say, well, this is one of only 10 with this ridiculous minutia of options and this really ugly color.
Yeah.
So in and of itself, should that bring a lot of money at auction? No. I think desirability is the key, and to that end, I've always found that performance is really where it starts and stops. Is this the fastest specification available that year? And I think all things being equal, as a rule of thumb, if the top comes down and it's fast and it's got a 4 or 5 speed, it's a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, that sort of rarity and minutia kind of aligns with, hey, this car was owned by a D-list celebrity. The guy who played the bailiff on Night Court owned this car. It just doesn't add a whole lot to the value equation.
Unless you have a passion for the
Night
bailiff
Court,
on Night Court.
yeah, exactly. And then sort of.
When I was working at Bonham's, consulting with them, there was an obscure soccer player from Argentina, and he had a Fiat 128, and they wanted to send it to auction, and they wanted $85,000 reserve on a Fiat 128 owned by an Argentinian soccer player no one had ever heard of. the man was very upset that we wouldn't even consider it, not at any reserve.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, about the historical connection. Sometimes it's more interesting than valuable, and sometimes it's all interesting as far as that goes. And there are very, very few. Even if you're big in the news at one point because of something you did, there are very few celebrities that last throughout the years. And there are some cars that were owned by celebrities back in the day that are still known as that, but you have to explain who that person was, and so it becomes something where the celebrity value, unless that person was a race car driver who actually was known for owning the car, or a person who famously was associated with the car.
Well, how about Jerry Seinfeld? I mean, he just sold 20 cars down at Gooding in Amelia Island, and I've got an old Bug, VW Beetle Bug, that was in better shape than his. It sold for over $100,000. His did, and now I don't have any aspirations that mine is worth anywhere near that. But the fact that Jerry Seinfeld owned that car, and he's so popular, made all the difference in the world.
How's your stand-up routine?
That's not going to work.
Well, I would argue there's two
Not
kinds
ready
of
for the
celebrity
casino
there.
circuit.
I find there's two kinds of celebrity there. I think Jerry Seinfeld, sure, obviously he's very well known, he's very popular, but by the same token, he is respected because of the kinds of cars he owns, and presumably that's always been our motto with the private collection sales we have, that this individual's name trumps the car almost because that's exclusively what they're hunting for. But to your point, there are very few celebrities whose name would stand up. We made some news a few weeks ago with announcing CSX 2000. In and of itself, that car is a rudimentary 260 Cobra. It isn't really all that special. The seats are torn.
15 repaints before it was a year old.
Exactly. I mean, it was, Carol supposedly drove it through one of the old Derricks in Southern California, a little tuned up on a bottle of whiskey, and imagine if that car had been crashed. All that car is a historical document more than a sports car. I would imagine it'll never be driven. But that is incredibly rare, a car of such historical importance with a celebrity connection that actually matters. Sure. And then more than anything, above all else, regardless of who it is, it's a bit cliche, but the documentation has to stand up. In today's industry, there's really way too many shenanigans and forgeries to risk that. The car has to have bulletproof documentation to prove that.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and that's so important, especially with muscle. Getting back to muscle, the documentation on muscle, especially 60s muscle and 70s muscle, it's everything. And so, if you have the broadcast sheet, the build sheet, the original sales information and all that, you even need to verify that because at some point somebody might have faked that. So, that makes a huge difference because a car that was delivered with a 318 is not the same car that was delivered with a 440 exclamation point, all that sort of stuff, because it makes a huge, huge difference. And so everyone has to be very, very careful about that and make sure you're getting the authentic thing if you're paying the authentic price.
Exactly.
Right.
The other side of that is if you don't have the money, get the 318 car with the 440 in, you're going to have just as much fun. And nobody should care about it. I mean, your neighbor doesn't know that it doesn't have all the paperwork, and you're going to have fun with it anyway. So.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with a non-original motor car. I mean, it's the way into, for people like me, it's the way into C2 Corvette ownership. You buy a 63 or a 64, drum brake Roadster with a non-original motor, and you could probably still pay in the 30s for that. Just know what you're getting and pay accordingly, and no harm done.
Yeah.
At which level does the research, do you think, exceed most people's capabilities? I mean, there comes a point at which I simply can't analyze a car and know everything that I'm looking at, or what might be questionable or iffy. I mean, is it particularly hairy in the muscle car market in particular, as it would be for Ferraris and?
Oh yeah, no, it has to have it all. It has to have everything, and a lot of the times, the value of a car can increase and the desirability can increase just because there's a picture taken in period by the guy in front of his house with his wife standing next to the car, or whatever it is, or car wash receipts, crazy stuff like that. And that's such a big change in the marketplace. We used to throw all that stuff away when we got a car. It's like, well, there's a glove box full of receipts. Hey, this is a shock absorber from 28 years ago. Who needs it? And so, except for Rob, he would do the Midas guarantee, and he claimed to be the same guy. But I'm sorry, Rob. wasn't supposed to tell that story. But you know, whatever, it was the type of thing that didn't matter then, and boy does it matter now. And it's one of the things that we've learned in all these cars in the marketplace, that the history of the car, the provenance, makes all the difference in the world. And getting into that, a bad story can be even as good as a great story. So if the car was wrecked, if it had some incredible, you know, like stolen, you know, out of a parking lot when, you know, the husband and wife were out at dinner, the car's wrecked and then recovered 3 weeks, you know, 3 months, 3 years later, and then the guy puts it back and uses nothing but passion to put it back together, that's a great story. And so, you know, all those things come into play. And it used to be there was nothing, you know, the bad story was death on a car. Well, it still is on a new car. But on an older car, a lot of the times it's you know, the story about the guy going out finding the parts. Somebody was telling me yesterday about they had an AMX, they wrecked it. The first thing they did the next morning is go and buy the cheapest Javelin they could find, so they'd have all the body panels. And you know, cut the Javelin up to make an AMX keep living, which is a great story.
Yeah, and it brings up another question. You know, Ken may have some thoughts on this as well, but I mean, you know, when you're dealing with a car that is 40 and 50 years old, how much does something like a brand on a title really matter? I mean, it's death to a newer car, obviously, but you know, a lot of these cars weren't worth very much money in, say, the late 1970s, the early 1980s, and you know, a $200 fender bender is, you know, sort of, you know, over and done. So I mean, when you see that sort of history, I mean, what goes through your head?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I look for, and again, when you think about these cars, it is a factor of price. If you think you're paying for something that's got great documentation, Dave said it, then obviously it's worth some more if you can prove that. But if your passion for that car is such, you know, then you should probably go on ahead and get it, as long as you're just not paying an exorbitant fee. I'm a bugaboo about rust, because you chase rust all over a car. You fix one spot, it comes up here. Fix one spot, it comes up here. I don't want anything with any rust problems. And so in those cases, when somebody's bought a car and they've replaced a fender or replaced the panels or whatever, that's a good thing for me, because I don't want to chase the rust around. It doesn't matter to me that as long as the job was done well, and you can usually tell whether the body work was done well or the paint is good, then I'm all on it. It just doesn't matter.
And we're going to be facing something else, and that's, Rob, you reminded me of that. We're going to find cars now that are 25 years old and have been completely restored that have salvage titles. The 17-digit VIN came in what, 81, 82, and so these are all tracked by Carfax and other people, and we're now going to see some of these muscle cars, some of these 80s and 90s cars that still have a salvage title even though they've been completely rebuilt. And I'm wondering how that's going to affect, I mean, obviously it will affect value, but the word salvage vehicle is just, death in some states. In the state I live in, Virginia, it's very, very, very tough to get anything that has a salvage title registered.
Yeah, and not having a clean Carfax is a big knock. As you said earlier, more recent cars, it's scary because you think flood, you think other things like that when you see a 10 or a 15-year-old car with a salvage title, and that's a big deal.
And there's a lot. I've actually looked at a bunch of SLV Pontiacs because I like that look. Yeah. And I've run into a couple with salvage titles, and it's and those of you who aren't aware, my favorite salvage title story was I was working on a car once and doing a valuation on it, and it was a Acura RL, and I know it's not a muscle car. But the guy was cheating on his girlfriend. His girlfriend took a knife to the entire interior and made it into Swiss cheese, including the dashboard. And the car was totaled as a brand new car. It was like 4 months old. It had like 600 miles on it, but it was totaled because the interior cost $25,000 to replace. So the guy went out and got a cat skin interior and and all this sort of stuff and put it in himself. But that car will forever have a salvage title. But it wasn't in a flood. It wasn't in a fire. It wasn't in an accident. He got his comeuppance from his ex-girlfriend. Sure. So, you have to be aware of why that car has that history.
Now, one thing we didn't touch on, we touched on how rarity can be important in some cases, but if it's rare because it's metallic fuchsia or metallic chartreuse or has the...
Wait a minute, she's on the pole down at the... Oh.
It's for the pea green metallic.
Moving right along. how important is, I guess, if rarity is only important in certain cases, power is always important, though. That engine option is all important if we look at how Hemis make a difference, or
Never enough horsepower.
never.
That's all the ways I've always
Well,
felt.
your company wouldn't exist. If,
There you go. Exactly. But yeah, I think, you know, the power part of it is a big part. Again, it's a factor of price. It's a factor of passion. It's a factor of what you really like as to how that all fits in. And the fact is that, you know, we've done a lot of supercharging, a lot of heads and cam work on cars that are a blast. I mean, if somebody came to me today and said, you know, I really want to get and want to have a lot of fun with a car, and I don't want to spend a lot of money, what would I do? And I tell them, find a C5 Corvette. I mean, they are a blast.
A C5 Z06 is probably
Yeah,
one of
that's
the best
even better
bargains on
yet.
the planet
I mean,
right now.
They
Yeah.
are, there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah.
There's a ton you can do with them. You can have a lot of fun with
And a
them.
lot of them are babied from new, too.
That's right.
You
A
know,
lot of
Yeah,
these
bought
cars
by
are pre-puffs.
people more our age than in their 20s and 30s.
Right.
And
We
yeah.
build them for autocrossers, drag racers, road racers, guys who just want to take them out, pop the hood, and beat on their chest at a car show. I mean, it runs the gamut all the way around, and they're a great value. But adding power to those cars, I mean, those LS engines are amazing. Of course, we made a career and a business out of tuning and building LS engines, but there's so much that can be done with them. And be honest with you, they're plenty powerful on their own, and you can drive down the highway in a C5 Corvette and get almost 30 miles to the gallon on a trip. So great
Excuse me,
value.
would you back up? We have witnesses. Lingenfelter said they're almost powerful enough on their own. That's
Almost being the key
Almost.
word there.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you back up a little further, you can never have enough horsepower. I think that pretty much says it all.
But remember, anything can be taken out of context.
Yeah.
So, Alan, what is being consigned most? Are there any particular muscle cars, recent or older, that are really taking off?
Well, just along those lines, just briefly to Ken's point, what occurs to me is that our industry, the auction business, I think unnecessarily derides modified cars of any kind. You know, we had a roof Porsche, for instance, in our European sale. It's an amazing car. It made the car better. It set amazing lap records in the Nürburgring. Celine Mustangs and these Fox body cars, to me, are extraordinary cars. I find that the auction market unnecessarily has focused exclusively on originality and matching numbers across the board where it necessarily didn't even matter. And again, bringing it back to that point of minutia, I think sometimes we lose sight of what makes a great car, what makes it fun, what makes it fast, and what makes it sexy, and thereby, why should it be valuable? But to your point, this summer I found that it's extraordinary how much attention Shelbys are getting. I think that might just be maybe a flash from the pan that relates to the anniversary of the GT40s, racing at Le Mans once again. From June to July, almost exclusively every phone call coming into the office for a Monterey sale, and to an extent here as well, related to Shelbys, GT350s, Ford GTs, of course. There's a lot of chatter about the race. Pebble Beach, I think, is going to feature them as well. This Conqueror will feature it as well on Sunday. So that, I think, is interesting, but I feel as though that happens on a yearly basis. There's always an anniversary of some kind to celebrate. People get pretty geeked about it, and then it fizzles out. But this year, it's clearly been Shelbys and Fords for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it does. And again, you know, these cars that you're just talking about are fun to drive. I mean, it really, in the end, has got a lot to do with, you know, the passion surrounding acquiring those cars.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything more usable and more fun than a 65 GT350?
There you
Seriously,
go.
that, you know, it doesn't get much better than that.
I think some of the things that also is worth looking at is these kind of, you know, not forgotten muscle cars, because there's really not a lot of forgotten muscle, but, you know, I'm a big fan of the Talladega, which, you know, has always been a really great story about the car. You know, the rear bumper on the front of the car.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
well,
so
any of the
you know, all
homologation
that sort of-
specials, Charger Daytonas,
Right,
and just
all-
people bending the rules, is a neat story.
Yeah, and those cars still don't sell for a lot. I mean, I see them, as a car that, somebody saw some, the Mercury version of whatever Ford is, generally speaking, sells for less.
Yeah.
And they can be just as good or better cars. And so, if you're looking for something, you can't quite afford it, you might want to look for the,
That
the
gets me back to
car.
exactly, and that gets me back to sort of the kind of Luxo muscle that we were talking about earlier with like a SS454 Monte Carlo, 69 and 70 Pontiac Grand Prix SJs, 428.
Great choice.
Very neat car. John DeLorean's other big project at Pontiac after the GTO. 66 and 67 Buick Riviera GSs. Any Cougar XR7. They're a little bit more, I guess kind of grown up. Different people bought them when they were new, but they're still very powerful, very good looking, very interesting cars that aren't as pricey as some of the more popular options.
But what I'm rather curious about is the younger generation that comes along and starts appreciating these cars. Since they didn't grow up in that era, how would they, if they weren't exposed to some of the more cerebral choices, and what they really know is 69 Camaro, 66 Mustang, how will those cars fare in years to come if they really have to be sought out? You have to really live them to understand how great that car is.
Probably not as well as the iconic stuff. And
I agree with
David,
that.
we've had this conversation a lot. There are certain cars that have that kind of pan-generational appeal that are always going to be desirable. A split-window Corvette, a Shelby GT350. It doesn't matter if you grew up with that car or not. That's going to speak to every generation. But the more obscure stuff, I think, as one generation ages out, another one takes over, probably not gonna see a really steep appreciation curve. But the other stuff that we talked about earlier, the fourth generation F-body cars, Fox Mustangs, Cobra Rs, things like that from the 90s and even later, that stuff is going to be, I think, quite popular.
I got to tell you, one of the things that's really surprised me, it's a little off topic with the pony cars, but wagons. I mean, I always liked them, and so I bought them, but I always stick them on my other building because I didn't really want anybody to really realize how much I liked them. And now I'm bringing them over little by little, and we've got some of this. We've got a '62 Nova wagon with a 4-speed. Once again, it's not quite the draw of the Levi Gremlin, but it gets a lot of looks.
But I had a '64 Impala 409 wagon, and it was the ultimate sleeper. I mean, it was just a really cool car to drive, but with the 409 in it, it was a real, I mean, it was a great whole shot car. You could beat anything at the light.
Usability is always one of the things that drives the market to a certain extent. And there's a lot that you can do with a car like that, especially if you've got a family. And I think they're just great fun.
They are a lot of fun.
Now, you touched on something, Alan, and I really want to go back to it. Modified cars, that there has been a snobbish looking down the nose at them, and they don't go to auction as much, and the prices tend to be suppressed. What's happening now? Are people accepting them? And this is something you can really talk to too, Ken. But let's start with Alan. In the auction market, are they coming to auction a little bit more now?
I think so, but I think what's also happening is that every single venue that auctions take place in, by and large, have competing auction houses as well. And it's a finite product. We're all going to be offering the same type of perhaps 66 Mustang, 65 Shelby GT350, and so it really is a race as to who can bring the better one onto the auction podium. And as such, what you're hunting for generally are period correct cars. Is it all original? Does every number match? And that's why I think we dive deeper and deeper and deeper into that level of detail. So I don't see that necessarily changing in the future, but what I do like is when really experienced and knowledgeable experts in the industry about a certain car, happens frequently overseas with European cars I found, will say, that's modified, but that's perfectly okay, because all the guys in the club believe that makes the car better. It didn't have front disc brakes, but it drives beautifully, and you shouldn't deride it because of that. By the way, the original parts still come with it. So that's really kind of our as much as we always say you want to do with a classic car what you love, we love seeing people drive them. And if driving a car the way it was originally outfitted makes it a terrible driver, we should start accepting the fact that it should be modified.
But isn't there a point when a Saleen or a Lingenfelter or a Callaway from one of the major tuners that is accepted because
Yeah.
they're so professionally done.
It is. I think my take on that is, and you named the cars that I was thinking of, you know, a Callaway Corvette, a Celine Mustang, or a Roof Porsche. The thing with me is, I know that in period, these cars were not exactly babied. So I think that, you know, there is concern about what the character of use of the car was early on, and you know, what does that mean for the car's condition today? Because to Alan's point, you know, a Roof Porsche Turbo, a Yellowbird or something, that's a really special car. It's on the cover of Road and Track. Everybody of a certain age remembers that, along with all the Callaway Corvettes, Celine, you know, anything that Ken has done. I mean, they had giant reputations from new. I don't think anybody looks at them and says there's anything wrong with the character of the modifications. I think just people are kind of worried about the fact that, you know, how has this car been used throughout its life?
Yeah, but I mean, it also, you know, begs the question, Yenko Camaros. I mean, there's something I think also kind of attractive about that kind of outlaw nature of taking something that's already perfectly great and then going way over the top
But
of
that's
it.
the fact that they had that, and Baldwin, some of the others, they had a factory blessing. And you, to some degree, have a factory blessing.
Well, yeah, sure, we have over the past, depending on the product, but once again, the modifications, you know, a lot of it's got to be in good taste, too.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, a lot of the tuners, companies that, you know, we worked with, competed with, and everything else over the years, a lot of stuff was done with really good taste. There wasn't anything too weird or odd about them, and, I mean, we're 44 years old. And we've been doing it for a long time, so when people buy things from us, they know we're still, or buy a car we had before, they know we're still around, and I think that helps the fact that, you know, they get a product like ours, or like Shelby, even some of the Shelby cars and the newer Shelby cars. But the fact is, you know, modifications can be in good taste or bad taste. And, you know, putting disc brakes, for example, on a car that didn't have them before, in some cases makes them completely drivable versus not drivable.
Yeah.
So,
Even
you know,
vintage air. I mean,
yeah,
I like good brakes and air conditioning.
there you go.
You know, the safety modifications are a different story, though, than a lot of the modifications. I think of it as a funnel. At the top is the stock car, and then the funnel goes down a little bit, and not all that much when it's like a factory authorized type of you know, type of modification, or you know, something that was done in kind of a big volume. But when you got to the point where, you know, you've got all this personalization,
Yeah.
then you're down at the bottom of the funnel, and there's not that many people who want what you did because it was personalized. So then you look at the car and you take the money that it would cost to buy it and add the money that it would cost to make it back to original.
Yeah.
When you're looking at it for, you know, for purchase.
Yeah, and everybody's different. I mean, if I'm looking at, you know, a 63 or a 64 Corvette, disc brakes are fine with me. You know, a third tail light, not so fine.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they
Which one
can
we
sell.
personalization versus modification. I think
Yeah.
Modification, by and large, is one of performance improvement.
Yeah.
But personalization, that goes back to, was it in good taste or not? I
Right.
think there's a generally acceptable frame in which your car just
Yeah.
becomes plain ugly.
But the safety related stuff, if you want to put seatbelts in, if you want to have a dual master cylinder in a 60s car, if you want to have disc brakes, stuff like that, you know, for goodness sake, take the old one, put it in the trunk, put it in a, you know, clean it up, put it in a box and save it. So if somebody does want to show it at a, you know, a high level show or something like that, but you know, no harm, no foul for
Yeah.
putting that stuff in, and that's the way it should be.
And,
We've
and
got
don't cut and don't do any damage.
Boy, there you go. We've got some Corvettes in the collection that are Greenwoods, and I got to tell you, you know, that's another car someone walks up to and asks me if I, you know, had too many brewskis before I bought it. But to me, I like to say to them, it's so ugly, it's cool. And they get that, because some of those cars have just got so much on them, and some of them have done in good taste, and some of them not so good taste.
Well, at this point, we're going to have to wrap up a little bit so that we can move on to question and answer. It looks like with the born-again muscle, as I'm calling them, and the original muscle, I think everybody would agree that there's a pretty bright future.
Yes.
And there's a new breed of less expensive muscle coming on, and the original muscle's in good hands.
Seems to
It's
be
still
it.
trading well.
Yeah.
So I guess it's time to open the floor to questions. Do we have a...
Yes. Annie is going to be walking around with the microphone, so if you would raise your hands in an orderly fashion. I see one there.
One is orderly, that's good.
And would you state your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Tom Lucius. I've had collectible cars for many years. I've lived through the trying to make my big block Corvette run on modern gas, fossil fuels, the green. Is there per se, a alligator in the weeds considering fuels for these cars? Is there something, because I use the bitch factor, trying to make a car run on that didn't have the hardened valve seats with the modern gas is very, very difficult. We all love the modern cars, but yeah, the collectible cars, is there any discussion, have you heard anything about fueling that's going to cause issues with making these cars run?
Ken, do you want to take this? Or
Well,
do want
you
me
know,
to?
it's a sticky wicket, there's no question about it. And I mean, we all just kind of assume things are going to go the way they've gone in the past and certain fuels are going to be available. But we already know California, you know, when you get to California, there's certain levels of octane you just can't get anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know where that's going. It worries me, not to a point where it keeps me up, but you know, the fact is that that could be an issue down the way.
Yeah, ethanol's scary, anything
it is.
on E10 or E15.
It is.
I use a combination of race gas and non-obtainment gas, the stuff that doesn't have the alcohol in it, for a lot of my cars, and I have to drive 50 miles to get it. But that seemed to be worked out. I just avoid all the fuels with alcohol in it so far. It's worked out, and like I said, I'll buy 5-gallon cans of race gas and add that in.
And it was bad enough, you know, when all you had to do was worry about the fuel. Now there are concerns with oil, with ZDDP, you know, being taken out of a lot of oils. You have to be concerned about that too. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern. Good question.
But I would recommend when you do a major engine work done, go for these, have new valve seats put in. I just had an engine done and we had the hardened valve seats. And there is a good directory online that tells you where to get fuel without ethanol in it, and by state, and that does help. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Steve Purdy from the Auto Channel and Shunpiker Productions, Loken.
Hey, Steve.
I'm curious what's happening with the values of the classics from the 30s and 20s and so forth, the Packards, the Duesenberg and stuff. Are those good investments? Are they stagnant, or what's the values like?
Are they muscle
That's
cars?
a perfect one for you.
That's not a question for Ken.
I think there was a lot of surprising news this year. I think coming out of Amelia Island in particular, some of those cars are doing extremely well. And I have to say I was completely surprised by it. I was quite pessimistic on those cars. I'm not sure if there's a rapid escalation there the way there has been in the Ferrari market and other areas in particular. But I think it just speaks to probably the first point that Dave made. Is the car great, and are the really great examples going to make news? Fundamentally, a lot of what we're only selling 800 cars a year, and so some of the news that we're making, which we're actively pushing with a very busy PR department, is touting 800 cars a year that we're trying to sell at a very, very high price point. So although I think classics of that era are doing well and the news is better than we expected, I'm not sure that there's any data that says it's a really sustainable, massive surge of any kind.
I don't think that I'd go long on 1930 four-door Packards that were not exceptional cars. But I think some of the, I've separated these cars into nostalgic and true greats, and I've been working with that now for the last year and a half. Some of these true greats, Corday 10, Corday 12, a number of cars, I think they're going to survive all of us in this room as collectible cars. But we'll have to double back down on usability and event eligibility. Where can you take the car? If you can only take it to a high-end car show once a year, probably not so much. But if you can use the car, drive the car, and maybe take it on a rally, or maybe take it on a 30 specific road tour or something like that, I think that makes all the difference. And so CCCA is working with that. AA, Antique Automobile Club of America, is working with that. And so when you get people involved in those type of cars, other than just sitting in the garage, that's where the fun comes in. But it's no longer economic. Well, not that it ever has been economically viable to do a restoration, but it's even more so on like a four-door unexceptional 30s or 40s car. And it's kind of sad, but it's just the way kind of the marketplace does work at that point. But if you have one, have fun with it and enjoy it. But it's not going to put your grandkids through school. So.
To your point, it is staggering. We do a lot of restoration work, of course, too, and it is staggering to see some of those cars, the chrome work and the detail work, the months that it takes, and the return on value of cars of that nature, even if it's a seven-figure car. Then consider how comparatively efficient and relatively easy in terms of complexity restoring a multi-million-dollar Ferrari could be. It is amazing. I mean, they're complicated cars, big motors, a ton of chrome work. The bodywork is complex. I think it was nice to see some positive news earlier in the year, but I'm not going to put too much faith in it personally.
Hi, my name is Suzanne, just a car enthusiast. I just want to do a lightning round and have each of you tell me your favorites and least favorite muscle cars, just really quick. And then one last question is there any truth, has anyone ever verified the rumor about the Hertz rental for the GT350s in the 60s, that someone took it out on the weekend and stuffed anything old in it?
Dave, you want to?
Okay, as one of the official older people on the panel, I wasn't around at that date, but I did hear firsthand stories about Hearst rentals. I owned a 66 GT350 that I paid $1,350 for, and my boss at the time was a car guy, told me I got ripped off. It was a $900 car. Too bad I didn't keep that too much longer. But I know that there were some, I think there was truth to the rumor that those cars were actually taken to places like Englishtown and drag race strips out on the East Coast in period. So there's that. My least favorite muscle car, I'm probably going to go, I'm not a Mopar guy all that much, but I would probably go with the American Motors Rebel. I think it's just way too much over the top, and that's what I love over the top cars. And my most favorite muscle would probably be 69 Mustang. That was a well-equipped boss car. I think they're very usable, they're fun to drive, and I owned, or my family owned, a 1970 Mustang, and every time I got in that little 302 powered thing, I would always kind of imagine it was a little bit more like a 351, but that's what not my mom and dad had in mind for us, and probably a good thing because that car did not get wrecked when we owned it. So.
I'm going to go, I'm a Corvette guy, obviously, and so, I truly am so passionate about Corvettes in every level, but that would be cheating. When I look at the cars themselves, 442 Oldsmobiles just really did it for me, no question about it, and very close behind that are GTOs. So, that would
What's
be.
your least favorite? Come on, I did it. You got to.
Boy, that's a tough one, because I love them all. I can't have them all, and that's the problem I have with that. I might go with the fact that the AMX would probably be my least favorite, because I think they just kind of put a few things together to try and
Straight
compete.
from the Gremlin owner, folks. So
There you go. Sorry.
I'm going to bring back into the Hertz story. One of my colleagues, who you know very well too, has a 66 Hertz car, and he's had it for years. I'm not sure if he had it when it was virtually new, but he tells me he spent more time looking in the rearview mirror than he did actually at the front windscreen. So the car's been driven like crazy. He also interestingly complemented it with the modern Hertz rent-a-cars of the same serial number, which took him about 5 years to find them all at different meets, and he's got all three now. He's never going to sell them. As for favorite, I'd say that first generation Mustang, for me, I really live by the edict that they got it right the first time. I really love the first generation Mustang. I have one myself, 66. And least favorite out of sheer sibling rivalry, because my sister has one, is a 67 Camaro.
Wow.
Least favorite, that's the toughest part of the question. But I would, my mom had a Dart Swinger as a kid, and it was really actually a terrible car. So I'm not just, darts and cornets, it's subjective, and they just don't have sort of the flashiness that I kind of like in a muscle car. As far as favorites, I was a huge SCCA Trans Am fan growing up and a big Mark Donahue fan. So I love any first generation Camaro.
Well, thank you everybody for your participation, for coming, and I'm afraid we're out of time. I'm Really glad everybody came. If you want to know more about valuation, please go to Hagerty.com. We have a valuation guide that'll help you look up the car you own, the favorite car you have.
Online and free.
Pardon me?
Online and free.
Online and free.
We use it daily.
Exactly, great. And so thank you very much. Thank you, Rob, Alan, Ken, Dave, and thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Brad.
The seminar
Thank you
series
so
will
much for
continue
making
on. Our
time.
next event is in Monterey. So those of you that are headed to Monterey for Pebble Beach Week, we're doing more there. And there's also one today at 10 o'clock a.m. On design.
Thanks so much.
Automotive
Yeah,
design.
I'll see you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Today.
Likewise.
Take care.